Williams here, and you're listening to Man in the Mirror. It's a podcast where each week I talk to a male guest about their life, about work, about some of those key items on their bathroom shelf. We touch on self-care, grooming, skincare, and what they really think about the man that stares back at them in the mirror. Now, it's the final episode of this current season of Man in the Mirror, and we're ending on a real cracker. This week, I'm delighted to tell you I'm talking to documentary maker, author, perfume brand owner, and Oscar-nominated actor. It's Richard E. Grant. Oh, it's such a thrill to talk to Richard. Of course, you'll know him from films such as With Nail and I. He was Oscar-nominated for Can You Ever Forgive Me? Films such as Dracula, and who could forget Spice World, the movie. And of course, he has his own perfume brand called Jack Perfume. So we're going to talk about that, as well as his book that's out at the moment called A Pocketful of Happiness. Such an interesting chat. It was a real thrill and an honour to talk to Richard. So I hope you're going to enjoy this. It's Richard E. Grant on the Man in the Mirror podcast. I'm Hayden Williams. Here we go. Welcome along to the final episode of Man in the Mirror this season, and it's a really special one. This week, I'm joined by actor, author, documentarian, and now perfume brand owner, Richard E. Grant. Hi, Richard.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really well. How are you?
Good. Looking forward to Christmas.
Yeah. Well, not too long now, and this is the last one, and obviously we can talk about all the amazing gifts that the Jack brand has for Christmas. But I think, first of all, it'd just be great to talk a bit about how you got into perfume. And there's a fantastic quote that's in the packaging of the Jack perfume that says, you know, I've been led by my nose all my life, and Jack is my signature in scent. And I think perhaps for some people, there's this misconception with you know, celebrity quote unquote fragrances where someone can just kind of sit in front of the campaign and not have any involvement. And the Jack brand couldn't be any further from that, could it? It's something where it's all about you without having your name on it, but it's something that you've created yourself because of a love of fragrance. And I wonder, was there a sort of particular sort of eureka moment where you thought, I need to do this. I need to sort of bring my visions to life.
In 1969, when I was 12 years old, I tried to make perfume for an American girl called Betsy Clapp that I had a huge crush on in Swaziland. It was the first American I'd ever met.
Right.
Neil Armstrong just landed on the moon that year. So everything American seemed so exotic and extraordinary. And I couldn't afford to buy her scent on my pocket money. So I boiled up gardenia and rose petals in sugar water and sealed in a jam jar, and thought that by some osmosis it would, a couple of weeks later, would turn into wonderful perfume. Anyway, it was just a stink bomb. And then, you know, almost 50 years later, I was on holiday in the Caribbean, and Anya Heinmarsh, the handbag designer and entrepreneur, saw me sniffing and smelling everything in sight, and she said, "Have you ever thought about doing something about this?" And I assumed that she meant psychiatrically, and she said, "No, make a perfume business." And I said, yeah, it's been my secret lifelong passion alongside acting to make a perfume. And she gave me a list of 10 people to contact to get business advice. And each and every one of them said, whatever you do not invest your own money because you'll lose your shirt.
Yeah.
So I've never drunk or smoked. And I spoke to my accountant and I said, what would I have saved? Give me a figure over the last 5 decades of never having smoked or drunken. And he gave me a figure and I said, that is what I'm going to invest in a perfume business. And then I went about, I got all the favorite ingredients that I had imagined would go into this scent. Lime, marijuana, and mandarin being the top notes. And then I subsequently met with a nose from Paris called Aliénor Massime, who I'd been put in contact with by Catherine Mitchell at a big fragrance company in Roehampton, apart from where I live. And then we developed this thing together. I told her what I wanted. I'd mixed a sort of very crude version of it. And the eureka moment came 6 months into this process where there were 2 almost but not quite versions of it. And I mixed both of those together, and at 2:00 in the morning said, this is it. And I counted how many drops I'd put in of each. And I called her as soon as it was, because they were an hour ahead of us. As soon as it was reasonable in Paris, and I called her and I said, "This is it. This is what I've dreamt about in my head." So it then, and it was launched at Liberty in 2014 as a one unit, only one product SKU, whatever they call it, and it became a bestseller and won awards. So that then gave me the courage to try and make some more. So I've now got 3.
Yeah, and then there's a real celebration of Britishness, isn't there, with the different fragrances that have come so far. There's obviously Richmond, and my favourite's the Piccadilly 69, which has patchouli, which I love. But I love how you described. I mean, it felt so sort of visceral to me, that this idea of emerging into Piccadilly Circus and from living so far away, and the kind of the sights and sounds and smells of that area, and you managed to put that into this incredible scent. I love it. I think it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Well, 1969, it was called Piccadilly 69 because each scent has a very personal story to it. And I was 12 years old, came out of Piccadilly tube station, and Eros was covered in hippies, and the smell of patchouli oil from them was incredibly strong. Plus the combination of petrol from the roads, which I love that smell. And then my parents took me to Fortnum and Mason for tea, and they had leather banquettes in those days. So the smell of the leather I loved, and also bergamot is one of the bases of Earl Grey tea. So those were the inspirations for the scent of that, which is why it's set in 1969. And because my first film role playing Whistler was set in 1969, and when I was making that, I always choose a scent for the character that I'm playing, and patchouli oil was the thing that I talk about and that I wore during it. So it's an homage to that as well. So it's a combination story.
It's funny, isn't it, how you instantly think of patchouli and that sort of late 60s hippie period, but it's such a great ingredient now that is enjoying a renaissance in fragrance, and it has much more subtlety and sort of texture now, doesn't it? I think I think it's such a fabulous ingredient, and it works so well.
Agreed.
Yeah. I wonder also, I mean, because I've been to South Africa, but I haven't been to what's now Eswatini. Is that how you pronounce it?
Eswatini.
Yeah.
It's a new Swaziland.
Swaziland, as you were a boy. But was it that sort of place that inspired your love of scent? I mean, I imagine it as a very verdant, beautiful, sensorial place. Is that fair to say?
It is. It's subtropical, so when it rains, the smell that comes off the countryside and everything is much more potent than what I've experienced after the rain in England. So there's a thunderstorm there. It's a hell of a thunderstorm. So everything is much more extreme, I suppose. So I was very aware of, and I've always smelt and sniffed everything in sight since I was a boy. And my father said, you're not an animal. Because I counter-argued and said, well, a dog does that.
Yeah.
And
my dog does
said,
that.
well, animals, people don't do that. And I said, well, I do, and I don't understand why everybody doesn't smell their food or each other before they either kiss them or eat something.
Yeah.
So I've just lifelong habit.
Yeah. And I think almost, people who are fragrance lovers, it almost becomes this sort of secret language and secret club that you're part of. I feel like you've allowed access to a special world when people who know about it. It seems the most natural thing to me. Of course, you've got to smell. I want to smell amazing fragrances as well, but also it kind of makes you more curious in general, I think, doesn't it? About what horrible things smell like and just the natural world around me, and hence now walking the dog or whatever. It just that feels like such an important thing, just to kind of smell our surroundings. I'm with you, Richard, on this.
It also, like you can hear a pop record that you haven't heard in however many decades, and it instantly throws you back to the time that you first heard it. And in exactly the same way that when you smell something, I've read that it's the shortest synaptic leap in your brain to your memory.
Yeah.
So even if you haven't smelled something for years, you smell it and you're instantly back to the first time that you smelt that thing.
Yeah.
So I love that effect.
Yeah, it's incredible. It feels like a a superpower, doesn't it? I think sometimes to have the right fragrance on that's working. And are you someone that do you have a range of fragrances that you like? I mean, are you someone that has this idea of sort of a scent wardrobe, or do you like to stay fairly loyal to your Jack perfumes? Are there...
No, I've been a loyal dog. When I was a teenager in Africa, I had Christian Dior Eau Sauvage, which I was absolutely addicted to.
Yeah.
And then I transferred when I was a waiter in Covent Garden at Tutton's Brasserie in 1982, when I emigrated from Southern Africa. Penhaligon was around the corner, and I bought their Blenheim Bouquet, which I thought was the most wonderful citrusy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Wonderful scent. So I wore that. So I've only worn those two all my life until I created my own brand. And now I only wear those three perfumes that I've made on a rotation basis.
Yeah, depending on mood and season and whatever else, I guess.
So it's a long answer to a short question. Do I have a scent wardrobe? No, I don't. I've had
just
very, very small.
4 Jack perfumes, which will do very nicely, I'm sure.
Exactly.
And something that I talk to guests on Man in the Mirror about is this idea of, the world around fragrance and grooming. Now, obviously being someone as well-traveled as yourself, this idea, I wonder what's in your sort of toilet bag as key items. Are you someone that has to have certain things as you travel in terms of, hair care and grooming and skincare? Are you? Is that a world that you're bothered about or not? I'm sensing not so much.
I've never used a skincare brand. I'm a complete first-time when it comes to all of that, and maybe I should. I've never worn suntan lotion.
Really?
So I've used the Jack body wash. Foams up fantastically, so I use that for shaving every day, and I use it to wash my hair. So that's 2 uses in one. So it's my daughter's cat meowing in the background. And if I travel, I'll take a travel-sized thing that I will decant of a Jack perfume, and that's it. I don't have anything else apart from a toothbrush and toothpaste.
Quite.
That's it. Well, that's what's in my bathroom, and that's exactly what goes into my travel case.
Man of sort of simple tastes when it comes to those things.
Yeah, very basic. I'm very unsophisticated. I grew up in a very unsophisticated country, so that's probably why.
Yeah, and interesting, I guess, being on location and being in those places that you don't worry too much about SPF because your skin looks great, actually. And how have you managed to keep such great skin with? Because I thought now the rule was everyone, every sort of drilled into us all, got to have it. I've only started doing this recently, so I don't know why I'm being preachy about it. But I thought it's not having SPF, and you've done very well because your skin looks great.
Thank you. I'm sure that it's because if you don't drink any alcohol and you never smoke, that has to have some kind of, I suppose, a benefit on your skin.
Oh my God!
Honestly, I never think about it.
It absolutely does, though. It's you can see the effects of people who smoke a lot. It's not great on the skin, is it? Really?
Yeah, Dot Cotton looked like a road map on the standards. Yeah, she chain smoked.
Bless her. Yeah. The character was all there in her face.
Yeah, but she lived a very, very long life, and I think she died. I think June Brown died in her 90s.
That's right. Yeah,
whatever fits.
What a legend. And another thing in Man in the Mirror, as the kind of name suggests, really is I'm really interested in men's views of their appearance and what they see, no matter what life stage they're at. And I've been talking to lots of different men on this podcast at different ages, but I haven't had an actor on before, and it struck me as really interesting. And I wonder, as someone that has to, in their profession, sort of look at their face either on a big screen or in an edit or something like that, I wondered, does it either make you more sort of blasé about looking at yourself and seeing it as a kind of professional thing, or do you sort of obsess about it the other way, or is there a happy medium? How do you feel about looking at yourself now and your appearance?
I've always found the first time I saw a rough cut of Withnail and I, having never seen myself in a film before, I was so appalled that I said to the producer and the writer-director, I give you the money that I'd been paid already for ruining your film. Because I thought that I thought I looked awful, and I thought I was awful. And I realized that you can't, you have no objectivity about it. And I think, most actors that I know find it very difficult to watch themselves. And I think the best analogy is if you ask people if they like listening to themselves recorded on a tape, and almost without exception, people go, "Oh God, no, I sound terrible." And I said, it's the exact same equivalent for an actor. That I think it'd be like asking people to watch themselves having sex on film, unless that's your particular
no thanks no
predilection. It's the doing of it that you enjoy. It's not watching it back. So I was told from a very early age that I had a very long face. I looked like a tombstone, lantern jaw, bug-eyed, all of those things. So that is what I agree with. That is how you're perceived. So
do you think they actually seep in, and that becomes your view of your sense of self in terms of the visual?
Yeah, maybe, because I've had, I think it's politically incorrectly, it's called resting bitch face or whatever. I caught myself walking past a shop window and thought, Jesus, who is that miserable looking fucker over there? And you realize that it's yourself. Because I know that if I don't smile, and I know this from other people with long faces, you look miserable. And I've had people say to me, God, are you all right? And I said, yeah, why? They said, well, you look so sad, or you look so grumpy. So I try and endeavor to smile as much as I can so that people don't think that you're, some miserable sod.
And how do you feel about doing, aside from the actual job of filming, but when you have to do the publicity side of things and photo shoots and working with photographers, does that feel like a sort of necessary evil, or is there any enjoyment in that side of things?
A necessary evil, no enjoyment whatsoever.
Really?
It's painful. And I've found that I've worked twice with the great master of them all, mistress of them all, Annie Leibovitz.
Oh, really?
And she does everything in about 20 minutes. She has everything pre-planned and set up and ready to go. And it's over before you can even blink. And as you go down the pecking order, the people that have 4 box loads and rooms full of equipment and take 3 hours to set up, it's like drawing teeth. It is the most just gruesome experience to grow. It's not like, going down a coal mine. I'm not saying that, but it feels self-conscious. They put you in clothes you don't particularly want to wear. And there's this sort of constant jab of, oh, you look so fabulous. Oh, this is so great. There's all this hyperbole. And all you're thinking is just get me out of here as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So that's my experience of it.
And interesting that almost the better photographers that, make it feel much more natural and organic and just get on with it.
Yeah, just do it quickly.
Yeah, because I suppose it's a very different thing to being someone who's a model whose absolute job it is to do that day in, day out. You're
then you have to look after your skin and what you look at, your biceps measure and all that stuff, I suppose.
Yeah.
And the other thing about having your photograph taken is that if there's a set photographer and you're playing a character, then you delude yourself that is what's being photographed. But when it's you yourself having to just wear your own clothes and sit around and pose, you think, well, they booked something for 3 hours. And how can you possibly fit it up? I've only got 2 or 3 expressions. You can do it in 5 minutes.
I've got my resting bitch face. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Talking a bit more about Jack, I know we've talked about the fact that there's 4 different fragrances in the range, but if people haven't seen the Jack website and looked at there's a fantastic blog there where Richard, I think it was for GQ, was it, where you wrote some sort of a kind of diary about the creation of the brand, which is, for me, as someone that's really interested in this world, was really fascinating. But one thing I loved, and I hadn't heard about from any other perfume maker or perfume brand, was this idea of actually getting to the testing stage and then giving it to some of the Liberty perfume counter staff to give you feedback and test some of the different iterations. And did that have a sort of material difference in, did you take that feedback in terms of what became the final version?
Oh, hugely, because Ed Bastel, the then head of Liberty in 2013, when I first went there, said, bring me your packaging and your idea about it. And then, he gave a stamp of approval and said, yeah, go ahead and you will do an exclusive 1-year run if this, passes the 6 people in the perfume department's noses. And because I'd never made a perfume before and I wasn't as familiar with every other perfume, because
of course
I had stuck to the 2 brands that I told you about before. I then, all the iterations of the first Jack that I had, I would road test it on the perfume staff there, because just get them to individually write down what they thought without them influencing each other, so that they were just absolutely honest about what they had to say about it. If there was anybody that said, oh, well, this smells a bit like that, or it reminds me of this, I would then readjust it accordingly, because I wanted it to be as original and unique as possible. So they were very, very helpful in that way. And, they just said, this is too flowery, or that's too sharp, or that's too this. And they were really helpful. I'm very grateful to them for that. And they said, curiously, which I found astonishing, that no perfumer had ever consulted them before about it. So I think that it made them feel personally invested in the
part of the process.
Product. Yeah, so I'm very indebted to them for that.
So interesting, and you say that, and I read when you said that they hadn't been asked before, but it almost sounds like the most obvious thing. I think, of course, perfumery has to be led by a creative vision, but surely the idea is to create something singular that there isn't too similar to other things. I think there's a lot of, whether it's fragrances, wines, or anything else, it's such a crowded market. It seemed very smart to me to kind of carve out an individual position, which obviously worked really well with the first Jack Perfume doing so well for Liberty.
True, but then again, the big companies or the niche brands that are way bigger than mine, I suppose they do all their testing on, their own
consumer groups. Yeah.
They're not relying totally on 6 people in one store like I was in Liberty. So I suppose that may be the reason why.
Yeah.
But it certainly was the complete amateur, as in the meaning of the word of being for the love of, rather than being professional corporate thing, is what has led me all the way through. So, every time somebody said you can't do something, you can't do it this way, I've gone ahead and tried. And in this case, it's paid off. So I think that if you go into something thinking, well, what's the worst that can happen? Well, I could lose some money on this, or but when I began, it was, I think 50, I'm 65 now, and it's 8 years ago, so I don't know what that is. In my late 50s, somebody said, it's the equivalent of trying to go into the music business as somebody approaching your pensioner's bus pass time and trying to release a single. Yeah. That's what chances you have of succeeding in creating a brand. So the fact that it has succeeded and survived has astonished not only me, but all these naysayers that I came up against before. But it's exactly the same as in acting, where, somebody says, you're from Swaziland, you don't have a hope in hell of making it as an actor.
Yeah.
So once you have decided that you are going to have a go at it, then again, it's what I said before. What's the worst that can happen? You get sent back to Swaziland and open up a pineapple beer stall on the side of the road or something.
But it's such an inspiring story, and actually it's been one of the themes of this podcast is, and actually it was something that I didn't sort of expect to come out of it, but there's the stories of entrepreneurship and drive and people setting up their business because there's a real yearning to do so and a hunger to do it, and just hearing about that kind of determination, I find it so inspiring, because it's very easy to have a dinner party conversation and say, there's this thing I fancy doing, and then actually when you realise the steps to it kind of just fades away. I can't do that. But you actually did it, and you were lucky to find some friends and some people to help along the way. But realising something that was a dream for so long is really inspiring. Anna Heinmarsh, who was a great mentor to me. She said, although she's not in the scent business, she said to me when I said, I failed all my maths at school and I can't do business type. She said, what you cannot invent or replicate in somebody else is a passion for something. Yeah.
And she said, you so clearly have that for scent that is what is going to drive your business. And she said, there are people who are professional bean counters, i.e. accountants and funding people, money people, that know about that, who don't know, and have the passion that you have for scent. So she said, don't worry about that. You will find somebody who will be able to do that side for you. So, and it proved to be. So I'm very grateful to her for that inspiration and advice.
And your daughter Olivia is in the business with you as well.
Yeah. It's a two-person, family, father-daughter business, and no other investors. Very, very small overheads. It's made in Wellington and Somerset,
right,
by Swallowfield Production Company, and then it's sold by an amazing fulfillment company in the East End of London, and in some boutiques. And Aspect of Beauty took us on as a distributor about 4 years ago, and they've been helpful.
Yeah, and is there a sort of delineation in who does what between yourself and Olivia, or how does it work in terms of who's doing
anything to do with maths or numbers or discounts or any of that kind of thing, or what is 5 times 7? She has to do that.
Right.
And she had maths tutoring at school because unfortunately she inherited the same mathematical impediment that I have. But she at least can write numbers down in the correct order, whereas I discovered only as an adult that I write numbers like a dyslexic, and there's a word back to front. So if you read me a number, I would repeat it back to you and I would write it down differently to what I'm hearing.
Oh, right.
So very bad for business.
Yeah, it might not be great for spreadsheets and things. Yeah,
exactly. No, so she does that.
Right. And is there any new launches from Jack coming next year? Or are there plans for new things?
No, because the last my wife died 14 months ago,
yes.
and I've been so dealing with that, and I've written a memoir and been touring a one-man show of that, and plus working on 3 movies over this year. So I haven't really had time to devote to doing another one. But I've got Jack Soho is, and all the notes of it are scurrying around in my head and nose. So I'm hoping that will be the next one.
Yeah. Oh, well, that would look forward to that. And obviously these things take a fair amount of time anyway, don't they, to gestate and then to develop. So, well, I'm glad that there's something new in the pipeline. And normally I ask the guest each week about the things that bring them joy and make them happy, which kind of seems sort of opposite in light of your book, A Pocketful of Happiness, and which is all about your beloved wife Joan, who died last year. And first of all, I want to say I'm so sorry. It's I've heard you talk on a couple of podcasts on the Happy Place and on brilliant Adam Buxton, and just to hear so much, to hear you talk about Joan with so much love and eloquence. Actually, I've sort of was listening to the podcast on the train and sort of floored by it. But I wonder, have you been able to do that? Have you been able to find these pocketfuls of happiness, and what does that look like in a practical sense each day? Is what sort of things might they be?
Well, she said this to my daughter and I 4 days before she died. And the wonderful thing about it is that she, within that little phrase, is to not feel guilt if you find joy or delight in something. And rather than always being goal orientated and think, well, you've got, in order to be happy, you've got to have this size of house or, that car or X number of people on Facebook or friends or whatever it is that drives people in the pursuit of happiness. To, I suppose, take stock of smaller, simpler things so that, even if the traffic is better today or the sun is shining all morning or, somebody sends you a nice message or you speak to somebody, that to be cognizant of that rather than just thinking, oh, well, that's just part and parcel of the day. Mm. So I found that has been really helpful. It's sort of forced me to, I'm always chasing my tail, to let's take stock of and find the best in something.
But it's such a powerful phrase, I think, because as you say, it almost is sort of making that mental switch to make that change and look for positives, because it's not always in our nature to do that. As you say, you're kind of running around and things can get on top of you. But I love that idea, but actually making it a proactive thing that you try to do each day, I think is is really powerful.
It's been a very, very good mantra to navigate through the abyss of grief. And when you get walloped by a tsunami bit sometimes and you feel like you can't get out of bed or do anything, then in just focusing on something small that might give you delight or joy in something, it has been really, really helpful. And I can't recommend it enough. It's a great philosophy to follow.
Absolutely. Well, Richard, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you very much, Hayden.
It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and to finish this season off.
Oh, thank you.
With such a fantastic guest.
Have a great Christmas.
And Merry Christmas to you. And I'm going to put in the show notes a bit more information about the Jack range and where people can find it. And obviously, there's 4 fragrances, there's candles and body washes, and this will go out. So it's still time for Christmas if people want to order, and I recommend they do. And thank you so much, Richard. It's been a pleasure. Merry Christmas, and you take care. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
My thanks to Richard. Oh my goodness, what a great way to end the current season. I mean, you can only imagine how busy someone like Richard is. Obviously, he's promoting his book, A Pocketful of Happiness, and all his filming commitments and everything else. So I really appreciate the time he spent with me, and so generous of him to do my podcast. So thank you to Richard. If you want to find out more about the Jack Perfume brand, you can do. It's jackperfume.co.uk. Now, there's 4 fragrances currently in the range. There's the original Jack Perfume, there's Richmond, there's Piccadilly 69, and Covent Garden. And as I mentioned to Richard when we chatted, actually my favourite of the bunch is Piccadilly 69, which is a really beautiful patchouli, ginger and leather fragrance, and actually perfect for this time of year. It's so good. If you're ever in London, here in the UK, the Liberty department store has the range, so you can have a sniff there as well. And as Richard pointed out about his body wash, there's also other things in the Jack range. There's body wash and candles. So check them out on the website or in store. Yeah, this is the last episode of the current season, as I mentioned. If you want to find out more about Man in the Mirror, you can do. It's at Man in the Mirror Pod on Instagram. I'll also add some more details about the things that Richard mentioned in the show notes, so you can check them out on your podcast platform of choice. So I'm going to take a little break for Christmas. I'll be back in the new year with more guests and more episodes, so I do hope you can join me then. But I want to thank you for the time you spent with me this year on the Man in the Mirror podcast. I really appreciate it. So my thanks to Richard E. Grant, and my thanks to you, and I'll see you in the new year. Take care.